The question I want to start with is talking more about reconciliation and decolonization in Canada and internationally. So how, again, this is a very big question, I know, but how do you feel that equitable and appropriate partnerships could help move forward reconciliation and decolonization? Can I open that to Alejandro and Dee? We'll just keep an eye out for Larry as well.
Thank you very much. Yes, well, I have two things to say. La primera, and please again, I request you to use the translation option. La primera.
The first one, the first thing that I think it's important to share is that we need to base ourselves on certain principles. Cooperation for development and the work that we have been doing in different institutions. And these 4 principles include leadership and the strategies for development that we have. It has to be respected. So these relationships, alliances, partnerships match the aspirations of the indigenous peoples. The second principle is to be focused on results, which are very important for our countries and the vulnerable populations, as you mentioned before. I think it's really, really important that all the efforts that we have been carrying out through partnerships look for a real change that can be measurable and that could be an expression in their life. A third aspect for these inclusive, equitable alliances is to work and develop based on mutual trust. This is not a simple way just saying it. These relationships have to start from the fact that the indigenous peoples, the communities, their own organizations really respond to all the support that they have been receiving and be transparent and be accountable both ways. This will strengthen the alliances and the partnerships. And I will conclude with the following. Yes, through implementation of different projects, we have been able to create those relationships, equitable relationships with the indigenous peoples. And IPTK, one of its pillars is to identify in our DNA, our relationship with the indigenous peoples. We are an instrument that was created in the through the ashes of this indigenous community. We were created through that. And this is really, really important because we need to see our relationship from bottom to top. And our experience in the indigenous communities has been strengthened as well, because from the beginning, we have promoted self-determination. And this has been done through the strengthening, the empowering of the indigenous peoples, political empowerment, social empowerment, so that they can be trained, they can learn, they can propose development models that will turn into projects and programs. So I would like to take advantage of this space to talk about the work that we have with CFTC. For us, is one of the best ones that we have, because on the one hand, we have been able to answer to all the requests without just seeing one point of view. But we also have been have had a challenge, a very important challenge, which is the migration from the rural areas to urban areas. Sometimes they come to Sucre, the city of Sucre, and they just get themselves established in the periphery. And we, through CFTC, we have extended our hands to receive these families, to lend a hand so they can encounter the urban population, not only to adapt, but to bring what they have and help everybody. So that's why we talk about inclusivity or inclusiveness and respect. And this is one of the things that I have been talking about with CAFTC, just to share, to be open. That's why we work with children, so we can change their mindset. Thank you.
Gracias, Alejandro. And Dee, do you want to comment from your point of view? Oh, you're on mute.
Hey, sorry. Yeah, your question cut out there when you initially asked it, but I think you were talking about authentic and equitable partnerships.
Well, I mean, I think that's also an important piece. Sorry about that. But I'm looking at, yeah, equitable and appropriate partnerships and how they could help move forward reconciliation and decolonization in Canada or internationally.
Yeah, I think, one word that really stuck out from Alejandro's sharing is trust. And, when we look at, not only authentic and equitable partnerships, but I don't think we can really examine that until we look at reconciliation and decolonization, because it does come down to trust. And even Jackie in her opening, when she was talking about moving past acknowledgement, and you can acknowledge a lot of things, absolutely, but if there's no action paired up with that, it really doesn't mean anything. So, you can look at, well, what is reconciliation? Reconciliation takes two people, takes two parties. Forgiveness takes one. And, I always, personally, I live my life this way, that, if we're talking about forgiveness, you know what, that's on me. That's to set me free and to kind of let things go. Reconciliation requires two parties, two people to be involved. And so, I always look at, as First Nations people, we still have responsibility. You know what? Let's say the other side may never acknowledge that. That should never stop us from what are we doing? What are we doing to become educated ourselves, to be, to empower, to be empowered, for our young people. And Alejandro's absolutely right. I mean, that's why I love my job. That's why I chose to be an educator, is because these are the seeds. Our young people are the seeds, and change is going to come through them. And I've seen it. It's not going to always come from higher up down. And gardening is like, it's such a perfect metaphor that I just have a small part in the seeds growing. And I've had the pleasure, like I said, for 17 years to watch many of our kindergarten babies grow up, go through elementary school, go through high school, university, and they come back and work at the school. They come back and work in our community. And everything that we've had the pleasure of walking with them through and teaching and instilling within them is something like they're growing into adults then that have that mindset, that already have that belief that I have purpose, I can make a change, I can make a difference, I'm part of my community, I'm part. And so anything with And it does come down to trust. And I said this before, you know, if as a partner, don't just come in and say, here you go, this is how you do it, this is the plan, and then walk away. We even say it like if we have high schools coming in to do orientation, you know, students, our young people know who's invested in them. And if you have somebody that's just kind of coming in, giving a speech, okay, why you should come to our school, or why you should, you know, sign up for our program, or why, you know, it means nothing to them. But it's the people that actually, you know, have come in, like, you know, every week, and, you know, and sit with them, or get to know them, you know, those are the ones that, you know, that will actually be heard, that won't be shut off. You know, whether it's our young people or our people, right? We know who's invested, we know who has that true heart, and that heart of humility for change. So it really, you know, it moves past acknowledgement. There needs to be action. There needs to be real authentic actions from people who are saying, well, we acknowledge this happened, we acknowledge, but if you never are willing to change, it doesn't mean anything. So that's what I would just say. You know, you can have knowledge of things, and I do encourage and I do appreciate, you know, when people take the time to, you know, as we approach September 30th. I mean, we're currently planning for Every Child Matters here in the community, and we understand it's just not a one-day thing, right? This is ongoing, and I value, and I do acknowledge and thank the people, non-Indigenous people, who have made it their resolve to educate themselves and to learn about, you know, residential schools, for example. But there really has to come to the point where we just move past gaining knowledge and really move into wisdom in living our life. I heard the comment, wisdom is knowledge rightly applied. So we can have all the knowledge in the world, but if we're not willing to rightly apply that for change, for growth, for, you know, reconciliation in whatever area, then it's just knowledge, right? We really need to move into that wisdom living, and that really starts with humility, right? So
thank you, Dee, for that. And I think maybe building on that, we've got a question asking, I guess, you know, about moving to action, exactly talking about what you're building on, what you're talking about. How do you apply that knowledge? If you're willing to have that, to work with that respect, that trust, that humility, do you have suggestions in terms of groups you may be looking to support, others either internationally or in Canada? How do you go about finding who to partner with at the community level to be able to build on that respect and interest to learn and be able to reach out? Do you have suggestions, practical suggestions for people, and how to move forward in that action?
Well, that's why I appreciate, you know, forums like this. You know, I think as a coordinator of a program, I'm probably the worst one. You know, I've had so many people say, you know what, you have to kind of promote what's happening. You have to, you know, put it out there, because sometimes we get so busy in doing, and but in humility, I recognize, you know what, I can't do it alone. We can't do it alone. And we understand, like, as in, you know, as Anishinaabe people, the circle that is needed. And so just having opportunities like this to, I mean, talk about authentic partnerships with, you know, for instance, like with CFTC. I mean, that's how I was invited to this, because of our longstanding partnership, authentic partnership with CFTC. So if we can put it out there, that it just, you know, even with OCIC, and I remember that photojournalist piece that we did some years ago with OCIC, and I think just bringing awareness to Indigenous programs, and that there is now an opportunity then for maybe potential organizations to say, you know what, we really want to be a partner. And you know, and I think just reaching out, I mean, you know, with our program or, you know, to make those connections, we need those networking connections. And we've had so many opportunities, and not necessarily just ongoing programs, but even just, I think, whether it is for special grants or whatever, through our networking, through our partnership with CFTC and other organizations. So it's not, I don't think it's hard to find, you know, communities in need. And so if you're interested, I mean, make connections with organizations that already have those partnerships. And it really is, I think, up to us then, as, I mean, I'm just speaking from our personal, my personal experience, because I safeguard, I really am protective of our community. And like I said, like, and the kids will know who's authentic. And so if you want a long lasting, you know, based on your heart and your humility and your intention and purpose, that will determine how long a partnership can last. That's what I would just recommend and put out there, because if it's just kind of like a one-go thing, you know, there's a lot of programs that do that. You know, I don't want to say they're a dime a dozen. I don't mean it like that. It's just, but I mean, if you want those long lasting, I mean, to really see the true impact, right? Like our partnership with CFTC, it hasn't been 1 year. I mean, we're going on over 10 years, right? And that you could see the growth, right? And you've been able to make even connections with other First Nations communities, that we've been able to learn from other First Nations communities, and hopefully that other communities within Canada can learn from us. So, I mean, that's what I would just recommend is, you know, find authentic partners that are already established, maybe make some inquiries, but just, you know what, check the heart, check the motive in coming in, and you know, if it's authentic and good, it'll turn into family. That's what I find. It turns into family.
Thank you so much. And Alejandro, do you have anything to add to that response? Thanks very much, Dee.
Please help me again with the question, because I was not using the translation device.
Sure. Sorry. So one of the questions was how to make connections if you are a partner who's willing to invest the time to, who will approach it with respect, will approach the partnership with trust. How do you find communities or groups to be able to connect with, to be able to help with some of these programs?
Bueno, en el caso nuestro boliviano,
in our case, in Bolivia, these trust relationship, these partnerships and work through these programs have been on, and they have taken time to build. I think it's always important to make an effort and to get to know the reality, to bring real work so they can know their own reality. And relationships will follow. After. These are processes that take time. They need to develop, and all this effort that has to be carried out.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. I would also encourage, again, people to enter questions into the Q&A. I can ask questions all afternoon, none to worry. But please, I'd like to hear from the audience. So please feel free to enter your question, the question and answer. We do have one question asking about online or virtual communities of practices or platforms. If you have any suggestions on how best to do that knowledge translation, to be able to share your work and share your stories so that others can hear about the great work and others can learn from it. What type of platforms would you suggest might be most helpful to be able to have others hear about your work?
Well, I know I'm
first, Dee? Yeah, go ahead.
sure. I know I'm horrible for it because I think I just get so caught up in the work and in programming and, you know, just, I think, not tooting the program's horn, right? Like we're just sleeves up, hands dirty, and, you know, and we're working. And, you know, but I'm coming to realize like the importance, and that's something that we have had a conversation within our CFTC meetings, is how can we have an online forum, right? I mean, we have so many knowledge holders, we have so many experiences. I mean, just over the last decade, I think, of things that we've worked through, things that we said, yeah, that worked, yeah, that didn't. And how do we then, I think, capture that? You know, you can kind of see like the pictures in the PowerPoint, but whether we're doing videos, and then just having this online forum, like, and what does that look like? How do we make that happen? And that's definitely something that I want to see grow, will be established. I mean, I know it's something that I don't have right now within our program. And some of it is because when I'm working with youth, I mean, there is just parameters, right? That in sharing, but I think anything that happens within the community, you know, whether it's gardening, whether it's our land-based learning, whether all those things, I mean, I would be more than happy to share, you know, what's happening here, but I also would love to see what's happening other places. So, you know, whether that's something that we need to plan for, to have this online, you know, especially with Indigenous knowledge, right? That like all the partners, even like at CFTC, if that's something that can kind of happen, that there's this online forum that people can just kind of visit, and, you know, whether it's about harvesting, whether it's about traditional crafts, whether it's, you know, whatever it is, you know, that there's this central hub that we can just all access, because, you know, I'm not just a teacher, I'm a student myself, right? That I'm constantly learning, and usually from the kids. I usually learn from them. And so, yeah, I would love to see something like that developed. I don't know if, like, Alejandro, if you have anything that's established.
Alejandro, ideas about networks or communities of practice to be able to share some of the knowledge from various projects or that might be going on in different areas.
Sí, bueno, nosotros tenemos una linda experiencia a nivel institucional.
Yes, we have a very nice experience in the institutional level to networking, and where we can build these spaces where different institutions can gather and can share experiences. It is important for us to get to know different realities that are really far from us. For example, the experiences in Canada are so enriching for us, because it provides an insight on these different processes, about common points that we have in our work, in the everyday work. In our case, I think it is important to suggest that these spaces where we socialize and share knowledge have 2 or 3 very important issues. The language is very important, because sometimes it is a barrier, and we need to make an effort in that. Sometimes we don't pay attention to language issues, but when you cannot communicate, it creates a barrier. It's very difficult to overcome that barrier. So we need to make an effort on that. And the second important topic here is that these sharing spaces, we don't need to limit to a technical language within the same institutions that manage these processes. It should be a space where people can be included. People don't necessarily need to use technical language that is restricted to just a few of us, or so everyone can be heard, different ideas. And the third point is the acknowledging of the knowledge of the peoples, the realities of peoples, how people live in the original peoples, native communities as well. And this is, they should be part of the dialogue, and they should dialogue with other native communities. So this is important, how this creation, socialization is as important for these topics.
Gracias, Alejandro. Larry, welcome back. I'm glad to see you, although right now we have a picture of a very beautiful woman up on the screen. Now we've got you. Larry, we've been having some great conversations about about partnerships and what's best around partnerships. How do we have authentic partnerships? How do we move forward in terms of reconciliation and decolonization in Canada internationally? I would love to ask you a question, Larry, as we have about 15 minutes left and we want to do the closing prayer and such as well, but I'd love to ask you not an easy question here, a tough question around funders, because we've been talking over the last few minutes about the importance of having respect and trust and inclusion, to walk along with people, the humility, but oftentimes funders don't, I would argue, as a person who works in international development and in Canada as well, the funders aren't always set up for that. There's always these funding projects that are very specific. It has to be on this topic. We have this 3-year time frame. Do you have suggestions, Larry, in terms of how funders may start to reconsider around reconciliation and decolonization and addressing those in Canada and internationally, given your work? Oh, you're cutting out a bit there, Larry.
Okay, I will see if I can get a better signal. I'm going to move a little bit. How is that, Elizabeth? Any better?
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, decolonizing funders. I once would have thought that was not only scary, but impossible. But the reality is that funders are saying, you know, we need to adjust the way we support communities, and there are good discussions happening. Of course, there's always the issue of diversifying funding, finding long-term strategies, and going to funders with those long-term strategies. We've got a long ways to go, but I also think partnerships both in the north and in the south, meaning that having these days only in the last year or two, but and conversations I never would have thought could occur. I'm not ignoring that the problem still exists, but at least I see some movement, some progress being made.
Thanks, Larry. Thank you, Larry. And I'll just let if Dee or Alejandro have anything else to add to that before we turn to our closing prayer. Dee or Alejandro, any thoughts in terms of what funders might look to try to address decolonization and to move towards reconciliation?
Yes, I think the ideas have been already shared. I hope there will be more spaces of this kind in order to continue the reflection. I am really grateful for the invitation and the opportunity for people to understand the situation in Bolivia and what we're doing in our organization, and also regarding the cooperation and the funding. I think no sound. Okay. I think everything that we have shared is related to this response. We need to be based on the principles that guide our actions, but we should do or provide support to Indigenous peoples through the institutions that really focus on their work. There are other organizations that promote neocolonialism. Not all the institutions, not all the organizations work to favor Indigenous peoples. There are people working, there are organizations working with other topics, GMOs and industry, massive consumption. So it is important to understand the feelings of Indigenous peoples. And when we understand their thoughts, their beliefs, then we will understand which partners are the right partners in order to favor the actions of Indigenous peoples. Thank you.
Gracias, Alejandro. And Dee, I'll give you just 30 seconds to add anything to that before we wrap up.
Didi,
Yep.
do you share something else?
Yeah, I think the takeaway is, you know, my dad always says it. You know, he's an elder within our community, and he works closely with the University of Guelph as well. And he always seems to put this statement into his sharing time, and it's, you know, take the time to walk with us. And that really, I think, epitomizes what our call is for partnership. That, like I said, you're moving past acknowledgement into action. And, you know, and I encourage people to, and like Alejandro said, right? I mean, we, within our own communities and within our own nations, we know what we have set up, right? What we want to see. And like he said, you know, if we're sticking to what we want to see and the change that we want to see within our communities, then we will know, right? As partnership comes, we will know the right partners that are the right fit to partner with us, because they understand what our vision is. And it is our vision, right? It needs to be our vision, what we want to see. And, you know, we ourselves, I mean, just like I would call for, you know, the partnerships to have humility. I mean, we ourselves need to have humility, understanding that we don't have all the answers. But it's going to be, I think, that right connection as we stay the course of the change that we want to see within our own communities according to our own vision. And as partners approach us with that right heart, with that humility, then I think the right partnerships will take place, and we will see change happen. That because we can gain knowledge ourselves and rightly apply it, right? I don't know everything there is about gardening. That's why I was so grateful to have, you know, two people say, hey, that's our specialty. How can we help you? So, but it definitely has to be, you know, I just think of what my dad said, right? Take the time to walk with us. And it's not standing, you know, way far ahead and just like, hurry up, you know, hurry up, just come on, or standing way back and say, get going, right? It's not that. It's coming right alongside, taking the time to walk with us and understanding how much as Indigenous people we have to share. And it's really about building relationships, not programming, not just programming. And so that's kind of what stuck out, you know, from, I could hear my dad's words in my head. You know,
your dad is a very wise man. There's
take the time to walk with us. That's what I would close with.
The African proverb, you know, alone we can walk fast, but together we can walk far.
Yeah.
I really want to thank, in particular, our panelists, Dee, Alejandro, and Larry, for taking for doing all the legwork as well. I know OCIC and Canadian Feed the Children have put a lot of effort in organizing this too. So really want to thank you for that, for putting on such a very interesting session. And thank you all for attending. I know we have lots of different choices of what we can do in a day. Things are very busy. Zoom fatigue is a real thing. So thank you for joining us. It's been wonderful to have you. And again, please fill out the evaluation before you sign off. But thanks again, and please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you so much.